This content is personal experience, not medical advice. Please consult a qualified healthcare professional. Guest views are their own.
Hi everybody. Welcome. I am super excited to present our next guest. Immensely honored. He's a huge inspiration to me and one of the biggest platforms in my journey that I use in the transformation of my lifestyle. I wouldn't have the wisdom I do today if I wasn't able to watch hundreds and hundreds of hours of his videos. He's been 99.9% raw vegan since 1999. 1995. Within the last few years, he's incorporated small amounts of what he believes to be healthy, heat-processed foods. I've had the pleasure of meeting and hanging out with him. He's an amazing guy, super authentic, truly living and inspiring a regenerative lifestyle through his stewardship of knowledge and wisdom to the future of our planet. Please give a warm round of applause for John Kohler.
All right, thank you. All right, so do I need the mic? Am I good? Do I need the mic? Am I louder? All right, I think I'm going to try to do without a mic. I usually project.
Great job, man. Good stuff.
So thanks for coming to my talk today. My goal today is to share my knowledge with you and share what I've learned on my journey. Right, I think I've been to actually all the other presentations at this event. Definitely some I like more than others. But where I'm coming from is my own unique experience. Since I've been doing this since 1995, I got into this because I almost lost my life when I was younger. I had spinal meningitis and was hospitalized, and the doctor said they had no treatment for me because it was a viral version. And in the hospital, I got to think about a lot of things, like what's the most important thing when I'm sitting in the hospital, and at that point it was my health, because I almost lost my health. Even if I had the most money in the world, which I didn't, even if I paid the doctor the most money, he couldn't guarantee I was going to walk out of there. So then I started thinking about, man, my health is the most important. I just want to get out of here so that I could, somehow turn my health around, and I had no idea how to do that. Luckily, I did get out of there, and I did find, juicing to build your immune system, as well as raw foods and cleansing and all these other things. And so my journey for the last 29 years is, hey, how can I build my immune system? How can I be as healthy as possible so that I don't get sick and don't end up in the hospital again? Because the doctor said when I was exiting the hospital, he was like, you could get sick again with the same illness or another one because you have what's called complement immune deficiency, which basically is a chronically weak immune system that he then blamed on my genes. And I've since learned that while genes are a component of that, another big component is your lifestyle, because your genes load the gun and your lifestyle can pull the trigger. Okay. Another thing I want to address is that everything I'm going to teach you guys. I like to say that this is like taking your raw food diet to the next level. And once again, this is my experience. I'm sharing my personal things, and I'll say tools with you so you guys have a bigger toolbox to grab from should you need them. Some of these things you're going to think are hogwash or no good or whatever, but I'm going to say all of these things have helped me either incrementally a little bit or a lot more. And I don't know which one of these things are going to help you, but you will hear some of the tips I'm going to give, and they will resonate more or less with you. So I'd encourage you guys, even if you don't incorporate any of these today, but at least remember that crazy dude, John Kohler, that I heard at the Texas Fruit Festival, told me all these things, and hey, maybe I should do that one thing on number 19 that he mentioned, because that's what I'm needing right now for you in the future, okay? So yeah, that's what I wanted to say, and I guess my goal is to live in service at this event. So I've been hanging out the full event, like some of the other speakers. I just don't disappear after my talk, because I'm here for you guys. So if you see me and you have any questions for me afterwards, anytime during the event, which is almost over later today, I'm here to answer you guys' questions and be in service to you guys. So thank you. And then also to help my talk out, I want to ask some questions so that I get to know you better, so I can better tailor my talk to give you guys the most value. So how many people are 100% raw vegan here? So a few, so that's good. And then how many people have watched my OK Raw YouTube videos or my content online before? Okay, so like half. That's cool. And then how many people have been doing this for like 1 year, like raw vegan? And then maybe 2 to 4 years? And then 5 to 9 years? And then 10 years plus. All right, cool. Okay, Really good idea. Okay, so the main thing is I want to thank Dave for having this event because he's put on an amazing free event, and that's another thing that's very important to me is to make this information accessible. Unlike some raw food festivals that cost like $2,000 to go to that many people can't go, Dave's had done this for free. I know he's put a lot of money into it and time into it. So I'd encourage you guys to give him a little donation, buy a t-shirt to help him out. And likewise, I really feel for him because a big part of my life is I'm alive today is to give back to the community. So how I do that is, I make content on YouTube for free. I don't have a paywall, I don't have a membership system that you need to join to get my best information. I put everything out online for free. In some cases, I think it's a little bit devalued because I do put it out for free, but I would encourage you guys to watch my YouTube videos. OK Raw is my channel where I talk about plant-based diet, and then I have a Growing Your Greens where I teach about how to grow your own high-quality food at home. I also have a website or YouTube channel, Discount Juicers, where I teach about the different equipment so you can process the foods as minimal as possible. So I guess we're gonna get into my tips. I'm gonna try to run through these pretty quick. I got a lot of them. But the first thing is I want everybody to have more than one teacher that they follow, because with different teachers, and then hopefully you're discerning with the information you're getting, you're gonna get more than one viewpoint because not anybody is entirely right. Number two, I don't believe in one-size-fits-all approaches since we are all different. We have different genes, we have a different microbiome, and so raw food teachers in our space say, everybody should do this, to me that raises a red flag personally. Another thing that's very important is sourcing higher quality produce. And these are all things that I've learned over the many years I've been doing this, and they didn't all come to me at once, so you guys are really lucky to hear them all at once. And once again, apply the ones that are important to you. But we're eating a raw vegan diet, just out of the grocery store. Most of the fruits here, except some of the fruits I brought, are out of the grocery store and they're just conventionally grown, right? The industrial agriculture system, whether organic or conventional, is not there necessarily to produce the highest quality food. They're there to make a profit, right? And they pick fruit early. They grow varieties of fruits that could drop and bounce when you have tomatoes that are flavorless, but they look good and nice in the store when you buy them. They pick bananas unripe, they gas them so that, we can eat them and they just don't have the flavor or flavor depth to them. They're also limiting the specific varieties. So if you buy just regular bananas at the store, there's Cavendish, but there's probably thousands of varieties of different bananas. At least if you go to the store to buy apples, you have a selection. But, it's really not good, the produce you're getting in the store. And, I've seen much greater success by not only me, but also observing, friends of mine, like our friend Stefan, who lives in Maui, and he's the only guy that eats a very high, 90% plus, 99 maybe percent fruit diet, and actually, does it successfully in my opinion, because he's growing his own stuff. And most people are trying to eat a fruitarian diet and they're just buying stuff out of the grocery store, which in my opinion is demineralized, not right, and also too, a lot of the fruits have been hybridized for certain specific traits, such as sweetness and not necessarily for nutrition content. So that leads me to, I want to pass around these guys. Some of you guys may have had these earlier, just take one and then pass it down. These are called pineapple guavas or bahoas, and I guarantee every one of these fruits are tree drops. So they're ripe fruits because they dropped off my tree. That's the only time I harvest them. And they're grown with love, care, rock dust, and all the different soil nutrients I put in there. So they're called pineapple guavas because they taste like a guava. They're sweet, but also they have a little acid flavor like a pineapple. So if you eat the skin, it's more nutritious, but that's when you get the acid. But if you just want the sweet, you can just tear it open and not eat the skin. I encourage everybody to eat the skin, of course. So to source higher quality produce, how do you do that? Because higher quality produce has more vitamins, minerals, life force. If you grow it yourself, and then you pick it yourself, and then eat it immediately, hopefully you could visit local farms and do you-pick farms where you pick it yourself at least, and you choose the ripeness, and instead of letting the workers in the field choose the ripeness for you and being dictated the ripeness. You can also go to farmers markets and ask them, when was this produce harvested? I went to the farmers market yesterday downtown, and one place called the Animal Farm had mini watermelons they're selling, and I press it, number one, it's cold, which means it was been fridged, and I press it, and it's like giving. I'm like, dude, watermelon shouldn't give. This is like way old, dude. Like, I would not buy that. So, like, but then most people don't even know this, right? So you want to ask them, hey, when did you grow this? You can also ask them, how did you grow this? What were your methods? What did you spray? What kind of fertilizers did you use to try to connect with the farmer more if you're not growing your own? And I would encourage people to eat as much local as they can. You know, as much as me having a garden in my backyard, I also go around and visit 2 local farms in Las Vegas every single week, one of which is a U-Pig farm, so I get to choose the ripeness. And in their farm, they pick things right, and then I still get to select the ripeness fruits from them. I would encourage people to do that. And then next, I would say increase the diversity of plant foods you're eating, including new types of fruits and vegetables, as well as other plant foods that can be eaten raw. So I know a lot of raw foods may eat only fruit. Some raw foods will eat fruits with vegetables, with nuts, and then I would encourage people to, even if they want to stay raw and keep the label, which there's only a few people that are 100% raw here, is sprout things like beans and grains that can be sprouted and eaten to still maintain your raw label if that's important to you, but then expand the different kinds of foods you're eating to get not all your calories from fruit, but to, you know, eat a little bit less fruit and eat more of these other foods that are quite beneficial. Also, I would say, another thing very important to me is grow your own fruits and vegetables. You're going to be assured the highest quality, the most life force, and it's just to me the best because you like literally pick it and there's no shipping. So many people I've met, like fruitarians, don't like greens because if you just only ever eat greens from the store, they taste horrible, nasty. But I've had experiences where I bring fruitarians to my house, to my garden, to other people's gardens, and they pick greens fresh, right? And they're just like, oh my God, I never knew greens could taste this good. And especially now that we're going into the wintertime, greens, like things like kale, taste sweeter in the wintertime because the kale starts making sugars because when it gets too cold, the sugars keep the kale from freezing. And if I grow kale in my garden in Las Vegas in the summer and it's over 100 degrees for 110 days and we hit 121 days, the kale tastes super strong, super potent because the kale plant is not producing these those isothiocyanates and glucosinolates and things to protect itself from the heat, which make it really like kind of more stronger tasting, but also more health beneficial. Next thing I want to say is, I want people to eat more vegetables, especially leafy green vegetables, right? I know in our community we tend to, idolize the fruit, and enough people don't eat enough vegetables. My goal every day is to eat 2 pounds of leafy greens a day, and a pound of that could just be my juice. It's easy to juice. If you juice a pound of greens, and I even say, most of my juices either green cabbage or romaine, which is very mild tasting. I have videos online where I talk about, easy mild tasting juices, because I know that was a question for Jillian. You could just have like, my favorite juice is like something like romaine, celery, and cucumber. And then I like to add in green cabbage. Depending on the green cabbage, it could be like a milder green cabbage or more hardcore, like strong tasting if it's like older. But that's a good base, and then add in things like kale. Maybe you gotta just do that base and then do a few apples or pineapple with it. I'm not the biggest fan of juicing pineapples. Just so like you'll drink it to start off, and then slowly but surely minimize the fruit in your juices to have no fruit one of these days. And so like all my juices are all green that I drink in the morning. I don't add any fruit to it. Maybe sometimes a lemon, which is a non-sweet fruit. And then I would say, you don't want to get into the sweet fruit trap. That's a fun one. So, in my belief, there is a such thing as overeating fruit. I hope most people would agree that you can overeat fruit. You can overeat any different kind of food. And for me, overeating fruit is different than what each one of you to overeat fruit is. And I think I want people to create awareness of what overeating fruit is. So like, for example, if I overeat fruit, I'll feel tired, right? I just want to take a nap. I'm like, whoa, I ate too fruit. This is going in, my blood sugar is getting too much, and I just want to take a nap. And I get tired eating fruit. It's insane. This could also happen with fruit juice, and I don't recommend drinking fruit juices either. And especially things, it's very easy to overeat dried fruits because they're concentrated and we're losing the water content and we're shrinking it down. And so, most people when they get into raw foods are used to heavy, dense foods and they overeat dates and nuts. I'm sure a lot of people in here have done that. And I think another big problem with the fruits of today is that they're a lot sweeter than fruits of yesteryear, like my pahoas, these are barely hybridized. Like a lot of fruits these days are really grown for the sugar content, whereas this actually, yeah, it's a little bit sweet, but it has a lot of good flavor to it. And so my goal is to eat a lot of more like, I don't know, like unhybridized or fruits that have more nutrition. Like I recently got a rose hip plant that I'm gonna, grow for the rose hips at the Heirloom Expo, and then you can eat the rose hips, which are a fruit, but like most rose, I mean, you can eat most rose hips, but this is a special variety grown for the fruit. And I think another thing that's very important is that in our society at large, which everybody should agree with, that we all have a sweet tooth and we have a sugar addiction because we're used to drinking soda, we're used to eating candy bars. Everything that you eat in processed food has added sugar to it. Even a lot of packaged vegan products and even some raw vegan products have added sugar to it. And then we have a sweet tooth, and then we basically go raw vegan, and especially if we're on a high fruit diet, we love the fruit and also the sugar, whether it's from fruit or from regular foods, and some people may debate me on this, gives us a dopamine hit, right? And some people on raw foods in the past, and maybe even still today, will make smoothies out of bananas and water and dates, and then it's not sweet enough because they need that dopamine hit, they add extra sugar in there. I mean, people know what I'm talking about. And so we know that is not good, but then the same thing I would say is that if you're eating too much fruit, you're getting too much sugar, you're getting a dopamine hit, and then you think, I feel great. Yeah, you're feeling great because of sugar, and then you can't sleep at night. Maybe your body's having to process too much sugar. I mean, I've noticed when I was very high fruit, I was just buzzing off the walls, and I had so much energy to feel great. But how does that affect your long-term health, right? And that's really a point that I want to share with you guys, is I want you guys to not only think about today and tomorrow and how you're feeling when you eat this food now, but how will it affect you in 10, 20, 30 years? Because when I started this, I was more rambunctious, right? I mean, I had very high fruit diet, I didn't eat enough vegetables in my opinion, and now I have seen the consequences. So for example, I'll tell you guys straight up, my blood tests, some of my recent blood tests show that my A1C says I'm in the pre-diabetic range, it's 1 point out of normal, a little bit high. And I'm like, how's a raw vegan, 1 point high, going pre-diabetes, eating fruits and vegetables? Right? And I'm like, this is insane. So then I looked at some of the science, and the science is clear. The science says that you're more likely to get diabetes if you drink fruit juice instead of eating fruits. And for all my whole raw food career, I just oh yeah, fruit juice is healthy because it's made from fruits. And so the science is now showing that that's not true. And then my personal experience my body is telling me that this is not good for me. Not to say that it's not good for you, because also, the person you are today and when you started a raw vegan diet is not the person you're gonna be tomorrow, 5 years, or 10 years from now. So I want you to think about your future health and how your diet now will affect you in the future. Because yes, you can get a healing from a high fruit diet, you get a healing from going on a juice fast of fruit, you can get a healing from going on a green diet like other speakers talk about. And that's because what you're doing then, you're improving a standard American diet, which is crap. I mean, people get healings on freaking carnivore diet, which I don't agree with, because in the long term, you're gonna shoot yourself in the foot, you're gonna die young, die early, but you can do the same thing because you're not aware of what is headed down the road. And that's just my personal opinions and observations from living this lifestyle for 29 years, and I'm quite passionate about it. Another thing I wanted to talk about is don't make the macronutrient mistake. So a lot of people focus on, I don't want to say any macronutrient numbers, but carbs, fat, and protein, and people think, as long as I eat 80, 10, 10, or whatever my number is, 65, 15, 20, whatever it is, I'm going to be good. But while those are important, we should consider those. I think a lot more important, and was unfortunately not discussed a lot in the raw food community, is the micronutrient component of our foods we're eating. I'm going to diss on bananas. Bananas, in my opinion, are very low nutrient food. Yes, they're full of calories. They have lower water content than most other fruits, 70% water content. They barely add hydration to us. Whereas something like berries are super high nutrients. So I encourage you guys always to choose more colorful fruits and more nutritious, fruits and vegetables. So I think I want to start handing out some of these things to get some food in you. So I think we'll hand out this one first, which is really fun. This is these are concentrated phytonutrients right here. I guess just take one and pass it down. Don't drop it. Those are freeze-dried organic blueberries and freeze-dried organic strawberries, which are the nutrient-dense part of that. And then there's a freeze-dried jackfruit that I made at home with my freeze dryer, which I'll be discussing in a minute. But this is a way we could concentrate some of the phytonutrients in food by removing the water, and that's why I believe also juicing can be good, if used appropriately. I'll tell you the story. One of the stories is that during the pandemic, we were all locked down and crazy shit was going on, and I was stress eating, and I had a lot of freeze-dried fruit, and I just started eating freeze-dried fruit because just the stress of the pandemic, and I'm like, fruit is good, and I'm gonna eat fruit, and it's totally healthy, and then I gained weight. And I think that was a huge problem because I was overeating fruit, and when it's freeze-dried and you remove the water, it makes it more, as you'll taste, it just tastes amazing. It was hard to stop. And so that's why I discussed earlier, having a sugar addiction, even when you go raw vegan and think your fruit is so good, we really need to, incorporate bitters and sours and other flavors. Another point I want to make is we want to focus on disease preventative foods, right? Not all raw foods are treated equal. Foods like cruciferous vegetables that some speakers would say not to eat are very nutritious or anti-cancer, help with phase 2 liver detoxification, and have so many benefits, as well as things like berries and other rich, colorful foods. And that's why it's very important to eat a variety. One raw vegan recently was juicing soursop, and she's like, soursop is anti-cancer. But then I look up the studies, and yes, soursop, the fruit is anti-cancer, right? What's even more anti-cancer than the fruit of the soursop are the soursop seeds and the soursop leaves from the tree. So I want people to incorporate a whole food diet, not just focus on fruit, because every component of a plant that grows can have beneficial effects for us. Another point very important to me that I was not aware of, because the microbiome was not discovered until 1995 when I started a raw food diet, was you should consider your microbiome when eating, and all the raw food books were written before, all the old school raw food books were written before the microbiome was discovered. So before the microbiome was discovered, I could agree with all the raw food books and what they said. Also, the times are changing, and modern culture and toxins are increasing more than ever. That microbiome has now been discovered, and we know that it is a very important, modulator of our health, and actually every organ system. Several other speakers have talked about the gut-brain connection, and it's connected through our microbiome. It's a big part of that. Our gut could make serotonin and all these other things, and send it to our brain, and depending on how you eat, it can make you feel crappy, like you're eating processed food. Good food can make you feel good, like some speakers have said. So I was not aware of this, and while most people eat for us, and I would agree that when we eat for us, raw foods is the best, because the first part of our digestive system, we're eating for us, and we extract nutrients from the foods we're eating. And it's very easy to digest things like fruits, some of the easiest. Green juice is very easy to digest, but then after we digest our food, it keeps moving down our digestive system, and then the second part of our digestive system, for the most part, is eating whatever we didn't eat. And so on a fruit-based diet and eating raw vegan and limiting my diversity of foods, I found that I had an overgrowth of certain bacteria that was not good for my health, and it was crowding out some of the bacteria I should be having. So then I started incorporating more heat processed foods so I could expand the varieties of foods I could eat. One of the bacteria I have is the Probiotic in an overgrowth situation. And online when I looked it up, it says Probiotic hates potatoes. And as a raw vegan, I had not eaten any potatoes for 25 years. And I'm like, maybe if I eat potatoes once a week for all these years, maybe a little bit less fruit, because I believe the fruit feeds Probiotic that I have an overgrowth of. If I ate potatoes, then I could have maybe better balance for my microbiome and have a better microbiome. Now, we don't know a lot about the microbiome, but we do know some basic things, like you want to have a good diversity of beneficial bacteria, and we want to have some keystone species. Everything else is up for debate, and we also know that the microbiome has major influences on all major organ systems in our body, and unfortunately most raw food practitioners, people discussing this, educators, don't even discuss the microbiome. So if you want to learn more about the microbiome, I don't want to get into today, but I have a video. If you just go to YouTube, do raw vegan microbiome, you'll see where I show my data and just share it with everybody to see my microbiome. You can see how to do it yourself. You can see how to download your data, upload it to a different site, and then analyze it yourself. if you're so interested. Next thing I would say is test and adjust. Don't just trust you feel great. I felt great and had low vitamin D and B12 for many years when minimally supplementing, right? So I encourage people to do regular blood tests so you can see what's going on with you, and if something's not right, don't just free diet's the best, I'm gonna keep going for 10 years and then have some B12 deficiency like I have known some raw vegans to do, and then they're in really trouble and they can't get rid of being shaky because if you get bad B12 deficiency, it's too far, you're too far gone to reverse it, right? So like at least test. If you don't want to test, at least take a B12 supplement, but I like to test many different markers to make sure that I'm on the right path, and if I'm not on the right track, then I'm going to modify and shift what I'm doing so that I can get my blood markers are important. And besides just standard blood tests, which I have a video on how to get a blood test without a doctor on my videos for as low as $5 for some of the tests. I also have videos on microbiome testing, which I believe also is a very important test. And recently I did like a full body MRI test because I have met raw vegans that have gotten cancer, that have gotten heart disease, that have gotten problems because whatever they were doing wasn't right for them, okay? And like I got a full body MRI test to make sure there's no small little cancer things growing inside me, and then 2 years later I'm gonna be like, dude, you're stage 4. Another point very important to me is that some speakers at this event talk about like doctors are evil, they're bad, never go to them, right? And I would say that we need to appreciate doctors for their specialty and what they do. While most of them are not trained in health, although there's many plant-based doctors that know about health, if you're in a car accident, don't try to go home and water fast, right? If you're having some major issues that are not going away by cleansing, healing, whatever you're doing, go see find a local doctor for you in your area now that's holistic, natural, that'll be cool with your vegan diet now, so that in case something happens, you're prepared for later, right? I just don't want people to fail. I think I want to do it. Oh, and then I'll say that supplements can be helpful in an unnatural world. Maybe like we lived 200 years ago when we had bacteria in the streams, and we were drinking water out of the stream, and you got B12 from the water you're drinking, you'd be cool. But today we've screwed up the earth, and the food that we're eating is not optimal, and all these things. So I think supplements you should be open to supplements and take them if necessary. Like I take B12, vitamin D, as well as some other select trace minerals. I have a video on this where I showed that before taking it, my B12 and D were low. I take this product called the Complement, and then my blood markers went up. I have a full video where I show my blood test, and you can see how it changed for me after I started taking the supplements. And then another very important point is that one reason why the raw food diet is so beneficial is because it's minimally processed. And if you don't remember anything else from this talk, is I want you guys to minimally process your food as minimally as possible. I mean, and so many people over-process their food by all the different things, and processing your food is not just when you get it home and you blend it up. It's about how is it grown, what's the process of when it is grown in the field. The only way you can control that I've learned is to grow it yourself. So once again, getting back to why gardening is so important. And then talking about processing, now I'm going to get into some more specific tips, and one is I want to encourage people to use a vacuum blender. Most people don't know what a vacuum blender is, so this is a BlendTech blender. Let me make sure it turns on. And then this is the standard lid for the blender. So most people, when you blend, you basically just dump everything in and you blend, and then it just blends up, and then it adds a lot of oxygen when it's blending. I'll demonstrate this here. So we're going to take a bunch of bananas. We're going to drop them in, and then we're going to take like 4 bottles of water. Maybe we will need 3. We'll need 4. Oh, that was too much. And then what we're going to do is we're going to blend this up, and it's probably going to overflow.
Make sure it's
And this lid is like one of the worst lids in the world. If you don't hold this lid on, man, it's going to blow up, and you're going to have a smoothie all over you. And we're just going to go ahead and hit the record button. you can see our mixture. Wow, so like we were like here, and now how did it get up to the top? Like we just created food out of nothing. It's amazing. No, we added a lot of air into it, and that's why it's now all fluffed up. So one of my helpers want to go around and hopefully you saved your cup so you can try this aerated banana smoothie. And as that goes around, I want to keep continuing. But anyways, what we're going to do next is we're going to put a special lid on the blender. So now the only thing we're changing is the lid. And this lid will basically have 2 vacuum pumps and it'll suck the excess oxygen out of the blender before you blend and during your blend to minimize the amount of oxygen added in. So it's going to be 80% less oxygen when using the vacuum blender, and you get a completely different smoothie or whatever you're blending. So, I mean, many people are used to this smoothie, and if I let this smoothie sit out on the counter for like 5 hours and then you come to drink it, it's going to taste gross. I know many of you guys that made banana smoothies and you couldn't drink it all, and you come back later and you drink it, it's like, oh, it tastes horrible. That's because the dissolved oxygen that we put into the smoothie is all the oxygen bubbles are now popping, and the polyphenol oxidase in the bananas, because we blew open the cell walls, are now being released, and it's digesting the polyphenols. There's a study where they did like cacao polyphenols with berries and bananas, and they blended it up, and then when they tested people's blood, they didn't have the polyphenols in their blood because it was basically digested, in the blender carafe or during your digestive system before it got into your blood. So this is why, using certain, once again, processing techniques to maximize your food value when you're starting with hopefully high quality food in the first place. Each one of these are incremental differences that can make small differences, but all these little things you do, like growing your own food, using a vacuum blender, doing some of the other tips could, add up to be a big difference. And once again, I mean, if you guys are investing in organic food every single time you go to shop, right, that can get quite expensive. But if you just invest, like if you have a blender, you just invest in this one-time purchase, and now every single thing you blend in there is gonna be more nutritious, taste better, not give you belching and bloating, can store longer. Like I have friends that are like will vacuum blend like dressings, and like they'll store a week, right? And if you just non-vacuum blended dressing, use it and then store it for the next day, some things you could taste off, right? So I mean, it really makes a difference, and I really like when I have like a live audience because you guys can taste the difference versus me trying to explain it on YouTube. Because like people just don't get it until you taste the difference. Next thing I'll say is, this is fun, is instead of dehydration now, I like to use a vacuum freeze dryer. So what do you guys think of the freeze dried jackfruit, strawberry, and blueberries you had earlier? Yeah, so I mean it's super good because basically remove the water while it's under vacuum, right? So it's an oxygen deprived environment and frozen. So now you're keeping the maximum amount of plant phytochemicals that can be disease protective. Whether you're doing berries or whether you're doing other things, like I'll send this around now. This is very special. This is my raw vegan soup I made, so I make it fresh, and then it got slightly fermented in my fridge. So this is like my favorite recipe. It's like I basically juice like 8 pounds or 10 pounds of bell peppers, and then I have pepper juice, and then I blend in nuts and seeds, herbs and spices, and then I go to my garden, pick all the right vegetables I have in my garden, chop it up, and maybe some frozen like peas and corn from Costco or whatever, and then eat it, and like put in like other things too. Could you wash it real quick? And then what I make, because I'll make them in a big batch, I'll make like 6-8 quarts at once, and then I'll eat one at a time. And then sometimes I'm like, oh, I've had this for the last 5 days, I'm gonna just freeze dry the rest. So that's what this is. Super nutrient dense, and then also the flavors just pop when they're freeze dried, and also now you're keeping the phytonutrients. The cool thing about freeze drying, right, is that once you're done, you put it in these Mylar bags with an oxygen absorber, and they can store for up to 25 years. So this is like, this is like if the pandemic happens, and like the grocery stores go out, or say you're traveling to Houston, Texas, or some weird place, and like I can't get raw food. Like when I go to Chicago in the wintertime, every March, I'm like, man, I'm not leaving the hotel, it's freaking snowing outside. I don't like snow. I don't know about you guys. I'm just gonna bring my freeze-dried stuff and then rehydrate it with water, and then I'm gonna eat that, and I don't have to leave the hotel room, right? I mean, not optimal, definitely not optimal, but hey, so since I've been having my freeze dryer, it runs non-stop where I just freeze dry bags and bags, because the problem is, as a raw vegan who had eaten a high fruit diet for many years and also had to buy for my partner, which I'm single now, I still buy too much fruit. And I can't juice it, so like I mostly get freeze-dried, so I have so much freeze-dried fruit, which is insanity. But yeah, it's a good way so you don't have like, food waste, okay? But so that's under vacuum once again, so we're preserving most nutrition. What do you guys think that I've had it so far? Like, aren't the flavors just like insane? So I mean, that'll concentrate nutrition for you, because once again, we're removing water content. That being said, that's a treat, not something you should eat every day. But imagine if you did rehydrate that, you could just add water to it, and it would be almost like I made it fresh.
Next year, bring the fresh stuff.
That's a whole demo, man. Like, can't bring this fresh stuff's not going to travel. All right, so the next thing I basically added 3 waters, the same amount of bananas. We're going to turn this on, and we're going to hit the go button. And if you guys hear, it's basically, it comes on, and 2 little pumps come on, and it basically sucks out the oxygen. If you guys look, you'll see air bubbles rushing up to the top of this, because now we're sucking the excess oxygen out of the kraut. If you look at the side of the kraut, it's also sucked in, because it's removing the air out of the kraut. The other thing is that it's keeping it under vacuum while I'm blending it up. And so we're going to go ahead and blend for the same amount of time. Now we're letting the air back in, and now the level sinks down, so the level is pretty much the same, when I filled everything up. Yeah, no free food this time. And now we'll send this around. And I'm not going to say there's no air bubbles, but there's significantly less air in here, so if somebody wants to take this around and sample it out to people.
Is this your favorite way to vacuum blend? With this kraut?
So this is one of the many ways I vacuum blend. I currently use at home the Kuving CB1000, which is a $2,000 vacuum blender. I don't necessarily recommend that one unless you're super rich. But this is a really good solution. I like that this is very easy and it's fast. I have videos where I compare the different vacuum blenders against each other, so you guys can see which one would be best for you. Let's see. Then moving on. We talked about vacuum freeze drying. I only recommend the Stay Fresh freeze dryer. There are about 4 companies in the country that make freeze dryers, and the Stay Fresh is the brand that I recommend. One of the companies actually sued me, so I wouldn't talk about it anymore. Let's see. The next thing I will say is I would encourage people, how many people juice in here? Raise your hands. And then how many people have a high-speed juicer like a Breville?
Appreciate it.
All right, good, great.
Thank you.
So yeah, I would encourage people to not use a high-speed juicer, because it adds oxygen to the juice, and oxygen in your food, in my opinion, is an enemy, because it will reduce the nutrition of the food. Also, high-speed juicers, while they're pretty good at juicing things like carrots, are very ineffective at juicing some of the most important things like the leafy green vegetables. Now the next thing I want to say is, I'll have questions at the end, so hold your questions, I'm almost done. Next thing I want to say is that not all cooked foods are bad. Okay, don't throw tomatoes at me at the Raw Food Festival when I'm talking about cooked food, but not all cooked food should be lumped together in the same category. Just because it's cooked doesn't mean it's automatically bad. That being said, on the same token, I'll say most cooked foods and things you'll buy in the real world are quite toxic, and I would never recommend eating them. Right? So like there's a conundrum there, right? Wait, he's saying not all cooked food is bad, but most is bad. What's up? So like here's the thing, like Karen Ramsey in her talk yesterday discussed this a little bit, that when you keep foods at high temperatures, it creates things like acrylamides. It could also create things like advanced glycation end products that can cause you to get wrinkles. It could create so many different heterocyclic amines and all these other toxins that happen in cooked foods. But really the secret is, if you want to avoid these things, is you don't want to cook foods at high temperatures that are dry. So I mean, that's really the basics. I mean, if you're on a grill and you're a grill master like Skylar did from his previous life, he loved barbecuing and hunting meat and stuff, and his girlfriend unfortunately broke up with him after he became raw vegan, because he's like, man, I like the old Skylar, not the new one, and now he's like lost tons of weight and stuff. But anyways, like really the worst way is just flocking in the You don't want to put stuff in the oven, in the broiler at high temperatures and bake your potatoes. I'm not recommending for those kinds of things. They're still quite toxic, quite bad, not good. And I wish more plant-based talkers would, discuss about the best ways to cook food or heat process it, as I like to say, because once again, when we're blending, that's a process. When we're juicing, that's a process. When we're cooking food, that's another kind of process. So I prefer the term heat process, because also they'll use that in science. So I want to say, so how many people in here think cooked food is addictive? Wow, a bunch of you guys. So I'm sending this around, right? I'm telling you guys in advance what these are. To me, these are not addictive, and I would love to know your personal opinion on that. These are organic yellow potatoes. I put in the Instant Pot for 7 minutes, so they're cooked right below 248, so it didn't create the acrylamide, didn't create the AGs, didn't create all the toxins in cooked foods. Then I put it in the freeze dryer, then it was vacuum freeze dried. No salt, no sugar, no oil, no nothing added to these. These are plain potatoes. And I'd love to know that after I send these around, if you eat it, you just feel like going out and eating more of these or eating like potato chips or anything. So, I mean, if you're raw and you want to stay raw, don't eat these, okay?
Below what temperature? Below 250?
So those were heated in the Instant Pot, and it's definitely, they usually say it's around 240 degrees. And then I have a thermometer, so I'm going to make a video where I test it because with pressure, it increases the temperature a little bit, but then that also allows you to cook for a shorter amount of time. So if you do choose to cook food, you want to do it at the lowest time, at the lowest temperature as possible.
Okay.
And then since I am a raw vegan, or consider myself a raw vegan, some people may not consider me raw vegan since I eat small amounts of cooked foods, my stove is still disconnected. So the only way I heat processed food is in an Instant Pot, and I only do it with water, so that way it never gets too hot, and I'm not creating all the carcinogens. And I eat very small amounts of heat processed foods. Honestly, it's actually rare that I really eat the yellow potatoes, because I usually only eat the purple ones, because they're more nutritious. So let's talk about, so we talked about not all cooked foods are bad, and then I would say, if you do choose to cook foods, and most people in here by show of hands are not 100% raw vegan, I encourage everybody who is still cooking their foods to cook it at the lowest temperature, and not only just use the best cooking methods like the Instant Pot, whether you want to steam boil or use the Instant Pot like I do, I would also encourage you guys to select the most nutritious food that you can. So, some of the foods that I cook are out of my garden. So eggplant you could eat raw, it's not very good, but I grow lots of eggplant because it really loves the heat in Las Vegas. So I'll steam the eggplant, you can put it in for 0 minutes on the Instant Pot, makes it soft so that it's edible and not tasting nasty. And eggplants, the purple skin ones, are very high in the anthocyanin content. Also things like I'll eat okra when they're small and baby, I'll eat them raw because they're delicious. But when they're a little more mature, then I can cook them and then I can still eat them and enjoy them. Is a great use of that. In addition, I'm growing like lilac purple sweet potatoes in my garden, which I'm going to harvest really soon and then be able to eat those throughout the winter when maybe there's not as much fruit availability. So I can eat a little bit more sweet potatoes and a little bit less fruit. Also eat things like purple rice. So these are some of the most nutritious, foods that you can buy and eat. That I formerly was just neglecting because as a raw vegan you wouldn't eat. Some of these foods can't be eaten. Another very important anti-cancer, anti-disease food are mushrooms, which I also, I'll get like lion's mane mushrooms, I get shiitake mushrooms, I get my maitake mushrooms, I get the standard buttons. I'll get, actually then I got some, I get oyster mushrooms, then I got some chanterelle mushrooms from Oregon, wild harvested, recently in Costco that I need to heat process and cook. And then I do a lot of beans, so that's very important, So for me, because I was having challenges with all the fruit, I wanted to distribute my, so they say fruit-based diet, that's because fruit contains a lot of calories on a raw vegan diet, but, a lot of people don't tell you that you could get calories from other foods, right? So like sprouted grains and beans, the beans that can't be sprouted, of course, lentils, adzuki, mung beans, chickpeas, if you ate a percentage of those, that could offset the high volume of fruit so that you could kind of eat other food categories so that you could eat a little bit less fruit. So these days, I'm just eating other food categories that are not able to be eaten raw by heat processing them so that I don't have the issue with my blood sugar. Also, the other thing that happened to me too, as a raw vegan, I was getting headaches. And I go to a regular medical doctor because I was freaked out because I had I had spinal meningitis, which one of the symptoms was headache. So I'm like, oh, I want to make sure this is not coming back. So I'm like, I got to go to the doctor. And then he actually prescribed, he's like, dude, you got diabetes. And I'm like, what? He prescribed me some kind of diabetes drug. And I'm like, I bought the prescription, but I never took it. Still rotting in my in my bathroom. But like, I was like, man, this is crazy. He's saying I have diabetes and he wants me to be on these drugs and stuff. And I'm like, raw vegan, how is this? Anyways, and like I had talked to some of my friends who are raw vegan and asked about my headaches, and I went to acupuncture, I went to chiropractor to get adjustments thinking something's wrong. And then basically, like they never went away until I started eating less fruit. So once again, my personal experience, not going to say that's going to happen to you, but I want you guys to have awareness. If you do start getting headaches, yeah, make sure you go to a doctor. It may just be, your diet that you're eating now, because you're a different person today than when we started. Like, today I'm 29 years into this. I'm a different person than when I started 29 years ago. And our bodies change over time, especially your ladies. Ladies probably change a bit more than men. You need to adjust for how you are at that point in time. So I don't want people to be too locked into a lot of dogma that is in the raw food community, so that you can continue to grow and expand and become a better person and meet all your goals. Like my biggest goal for living a raw vegan diet is I do this for my health. I don't do this for dogma. I don't do this for any other reason, and it keeps me going, and I'm glad that I was able to share all these tips with you guys today so it can help you out. And I want to know, what did you guys think of the vacuum blended versus non-vacuum blended smoothie? Did you guys taste the difference? Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Much thicker.
Yeah, bigger, maybe more flavorful. Like you're not swallowing the air. Like it's huge. So I just want. And here's the thing. Like I don't give a crap if you guys don't buy a lid or whatever, a vacuum blender to do it. Right? If you guys want to buy one of those, I have a coupon code DJ25 at boyd-system.com. That being said, like I learned about vacuum blending in 2017. There's like a handful of raw vegans that discuss this, or will share with you guys how important it is. It's made a significant difference in my life, especially in prep, because now I can batch prep, and then I store things under vacuum. And so like if you store your fruits and vegetables, or if you store your like blended smoothies or juices, you pull out the air and the dissolved oxygen out of, especially the juices, before you save it, they save significantly longer, and the flavor doesn't change as bad. So I can store some of my juices for 7 days. My dressings store for like easily a week. I'll cook food in big batches in the Instant Pot, and then I'll basically put them under vacuum in a jar. I have videos on this, and they'll store for like 2 weeks. Right? So that way you can have all the food ready to go, because you're busy working 40 hours a week. You can take it like a Sunday to make all your juice, all your, if you're eating cooked food, you can make your fresh salads or raw soups like I do, vacuum seal them, and then you have them ready to go. That's how I'm able to basically just spend a lot of time to batch prep, and then I can just basically grab and go out of my fridge. So it really saves me a lot of time from doing it every day. That being said, I will say that making your food fresh every day and eating it right then and there is the best. Absolutely, I'm never going to tell you guys not to do that. Or everything that I grow, I pick fresh and then I make it. Some of which I eat right then and there. Some of which ends up getting stale. But I want to encourage people always to do the best they can. Like good, better, best is one of the things that I teach. And I want you guys to remember that. It's not just right, wrong, good, bad. It can be good, better, best. So there's always better options you can do. And I want you to always reach to the next level so that you can hopefully incorporate some of these tips when you may need them, so that you can also thrive on this diet. Because I hate when I see videos of people like, was raw vegan, no longer raw vegan, and they're eating meat and all these things. Because I think another thing I believe is that the more restrictive you are in your diet, and that's why I recommend diversity, like Will Bolsowitz, who wrote the book called Fiber Fuel, who's a plant-based doctor, right? He says 30 different kinds of fruits and vegetables and other plant foods a week. And even if you eat like a red apple versus a green apple, that counts. And you want to incorporate herbs and spices, even things like seaweeds, because if you think the food is demineralized because they're not adding minerals in the soil, which is true. The only way really to get some good minerals through food sources these days are actually from seaweeds. But then some seaweeds are also contaminated with heavy metals, so you gotta, just eat a little bit of seaweed. We don't want to live a seaweed diet, seaweed-based diet, but hey, a few nori here and there, some dulse and some other kind of seaweeds that are lower in heavy metals, I think are quite beneficial. So anyways, I could keep going forever, but I want to stop, and I'm glad to take any questions, because maybe some of my things that I've discussed today have, sparked some interest or questions with you, because I didn't go deep enough. But I do have videos on all these topics on my channel, but you guys got like a whole download in one talk, so I hope this is very valuable to you. Skylar.
Yeah. So what do you keep track of and did you ever keep track of your fats and carbs and protein? Yeah.
So I have not. So like my goal. So I learned like raw vegan, like low fat stuff. So for the most part, like I never ate more than a handful of nuts and seeds a day, and I still do that to this day. And maybe I should probably eat a little bit more fat in sometimes. But one thing I did that was very bad and detrimental to my health, in my personal opinion, that I didn't see at the time, that I would totally do different back then, is because I've also seen that I've also had high cholesterol as a vegan, which is like really rare. I mean, and so there's reasons for that. It could be because you're eating too much fruit, it converts to triglycerides, it converts to cholesterol. But another reason is saturated fat. So I do have a video where I said I reduced my cholesterol by X points by eliminating saturated fats such as coconut and and then also dried fruit at that point. But like I think that when I was younger, I would basically make banana and young coconut smoothies like every day. I was like, they're my favorite. I did like 2 young coconuts, water with meat, and then bananas, frozen bananas, and then a vanilla bean, and then green powder. And it's like, man, I should have been totally like just making, like I should have not had the coconut meat. I should have had like, more fresh greens in there. Should have had maybe less bananas in there. But I mean, that's what I would have did now looking back at that. But at the time I was like, no, this is so good. It's healthy for me. It's raw. Just because it's raw, it's healthy. Right? But that was way too much fat in my opinion.
Where would you recommend we can buy nuts and seeds from? Can we go to Costco?
So nuts and seeds. The question is where to buy nuts and seeds. So I get my nuts and seeds from all over. Depends on the nut and seed, right? So I think the best nuts and seeds are ones that are local. So I heard locally now it's pecan season. So find a local park where there's pecan trees here in Texas and pick all you can off the ground. And I would say the other thing is we're getting into the winter time, and the winter time is when they start having in-shell nuts to buy. And I encourage people to either pick nuts off the tree and have them in shell, keep them in the shell, don't shell them, or buy them in shell from the store. Because why? Because nuts in the shell are nature's packaging for the nut to keep it stable so it doesn't get the oxygen in there and it doesn't go rancid. Another very important point, and I think I made a video on this for my brother's tree. He has an almond tree. And like I would go to his almond tree and like pick all the almonds off it, and then you have to take out the outer husk, and then you gotta crack it, then you could like eat it. And then it took me like hours to make like a small little bag of nuts. Then I show in the video going to the bulk bin and boom, I have so many nuts. So if you have in-shell nuts, you're not gonna eat them that fast because you gotta crack every damn one. All right, yes. So where to buy them? So yeah. Get them in shell whenever you can, get them local, and then different nuts are different. So like for macadamia nuts, I'm gonna post a video today. I bought my macadamia nuts only from like a guy in Hawaii that dehydrates them so they're raw. And they're the highest quality mac nuts. Most mac nuts you get maybe imported from South Africa, it tastes like shit. But these guys' mac nuts are the best. So like I find select people to get certain nuts from.
You found them on a website?
Yeah, so Dr. Paolo's Kona coffee, he has a coffee farm, but he also has the mac nuts. So that's where you get mac nuts. So I say Brazil nuts, like some Brazil nuts in bulk bins, man, they go kind of rancid quick. So like Costco actually has pretty good Brazil nuts. I do get my cashews that are not truly raw from Costco also, they're organic. So Brazil nuts, organic, Costco, and the organic Brazil nuts, Costco. But then if you want better Brazil nuts, there's a company on Amazon that will nitrogen flush the Brazil nuts and then sell them to you. I forget the name of the company, but I saw them at the trade show and they're in one of my videos. And those nuts are like the next level for Brazil nuts. That means that I say get in-shell Brazil nuts because that's a nice hard shell and it's going to keep it fresh for longer. And then you're also going to, because now when you're making a raw food dressing, you can't just dump a shit ton in. You got to crack each one, and you're not going to shell any more than you need to. And then you're going to get a workout cracking them. And then if you want to get really raw cashews, I'd recommend Matt Monarch at the Raw Food World. He still sells the truly raw cashews, which I don't think cashews are one of the best nuts, but hey, there's still a nut. They make things nice and creamy. And then walnuts, I usually always get locally at the farmer's market, and I prefer to buy the red walnuts. So they're really fun because they're more nutritious. Yes.
I asked this all the speakers,
Sure.
really anyone that I can. Might not be here quickly, but you mentioned seaweed and like sea moss or like supplements from the sea. As far as heavy metals go, how do you go about detoxing, or would you recommend anything to take to help detox heavy metals?
So his question is on how do you detox heavy metals from the body. So I'm definitely no expert in this situation. I will say when I got all my mercury removed out from my mouth, I did take a lot of chlorella and also cilantro, but I'm sure there's like all these other things, what is it, ETA, or all these things you can do, and I'm definitely no expert in that, so you want to try to talk to somebody else. My goal is to like not get all these heavy metals in me in the first place, so I don't have to detox them, you know, but I mean, from the starting point where you're at, it may be important, and you know, I mean, I'm taking things like zeolite, which they say pulls out heavy metals, which I have no idea really does it or not, but yeah, that's my best answer. Yes. Yes.
I don't have a juicer and I don't have a vacuum blender. Is there any benefit to me blending raw vegetables, or am I better off just eating them?
So that's a really good question. So she doesn't have a blender or a vacuum blender or a juicer. So is she better off blending them or eating them? So you know, here's the thing that I've learned looking at a lot of published science is that you know what's the best for you may not be the best for me. Like you may digest things better in a juice state or maybe a blended state, and I don't know which one you need. So I think, or you know, like that's why I also heat process food. So like, what's the best way to eat a carrot? Is it cooked? Because the studies say that when you cook carrots, you get more beta carotene. Or is it raw? You know, so you can get the fiber and get the crunch. Or is it like, you know, juice? So you extract the beta carotene without the cooking process, right? And based on the science and what I've seen is that every different method and how you process food, that food will affect your body differently. And I'm not one to say what's the best for you. I would say for me personally, I try to do a little bit of all of them. So yeah, nowadays I will juice carrots, which is my favorite. I'll shred carrots in my salad. I will also cook carrots sometime to get them in that way, because each way you're processing it will give us a different result in the body. And I don't want to like say only raw is the best anymore, because now I do eat processed things. Because I've gone over studies on my channel where I talk about how some nutrients can be increased when they're heat processed, because basically they're released for the most part because cell walls are broken open, you know. And then also the heat can like change like, you know, lycopene from trans to cis lycopene that's better absorbed, for example. And that's why they say tomatoes are better cooked. But then also another thing I learned recently from Rick and Karen Dina, you know, Karen had a really good video talking about like if you want lycopene from tomatoes, you actually want to buy the orange or yellow one, because that already has the converted kind of lycopene that we can absorb better, right? So it's like all these little hacks that I learned over time, and I would encourage. Oh, and so I was talking earlier that if you don't want to buy a vacuum blender, you can make your own if you're handy. So when I learned about vacuum blending in 2017, you couldn't buy them; they weren't available yet. I'm like, I need a vacuum blender because I was at a trade show and I saw how it worked. I tasted the difference. I'm like, I've been blending wrong for 20 years. And I'm like, but I can't vacuum blend because nobody has the machines available. So then I basically took a NutriBullet, drove a hole in the top, put a little vacuum valve on it, and a pump from Amazon. It was like a $10 kit, and I made my own. So I mean, that's a very rudimentary one, but I have that video online on how to convert your blender to vacuum blender. And actually, Chris Kendall had a really cool solution. He bought this little like silicone top that he would basically put on the blender, and then he put a hole in the top, then put the regular lid on, so now it made a good seal, and then he put a vacuum pump on here to pump it out. So I mean, I don't know. So there's ways to do it without buying the real equipment if you don't have the money. And I really like to make these technologies available to people that may not want to or can't afford it if they're handy in the back.
What kind of cultured foods are you doing? Like, are you doing yogurt?
That's an excellent question. So that I should have talked about that, but I believe cultured foods are very essential for our health. Some of the published studies, like, you know, I recommended eating 30 different kinds of plant foods in a week. There's a study where they basically compared eating more fiber versus eating more fermented and, you know, cultured foods. And eating more cultured foods better lowered inflammation in the person and better increased their microbiome diversity. So the cultured foods I like to do, I do this stuff called coconut kefir, but I buy it because I visited the facility that makes it, and on the label it says 100 trillion bacteria in there, or, you know, bacteria, which is like insanely amount. Because even a probiotic capsule could have like 2 billion or 6 billion, but this has 100 trillion. So then I bought it a few times, and I'm like, I don't know if I believe this company. So I went down there to inspect them to make sure that, you know, they're legit and they're doing their stuff. Because I'm not gonna, like, people make claims all the time, and so many people, you've been in the wrong community, make a lot of claims that are not necessarily true, unfortunately, in my opinion. So I went down there and inspected them, saw how they did it, and I better understood the process, made a video for everybody. I also saw I saw multiple test data reports that they sent the product out to labs to see how many bacteria is in it, and it does have over 100 trillion in there. So actually, in general, I drink one of those a day. Whether it's, you know, I usually put it in a smoothie. Sometimes I'll add it to my raw vegan soups that you may have gotten some of those bacteria in there. And it's not a wild ferment, right? So wild ferments are great because you're getting the cultures that may be good for us, but then also a very important part is that the cultures are breaking down some of the food and then making additional acids and other secondary metabolites that we may not have gotten otherwise. And also that could be good for our microbiome, depending on what it is. But they use like specific strains from Europe that have shown to have clinical significance for helping certain situations, right? Which they can't really make any kind of claims, but you can look up like a specific, you know, whatever strain that they're using and what benefits it has. So that's the main one I take. I do a cheater kraut, which basically I buy the sauerkraut from Costco, that's organic, and then I buy 2 heads of cabbage, shred it up, and then I add the kraut and the juice to it in 2 big mason jars, like I make a gallon at once because it's 2 half-gallon mason jars, and then that happens a lot faster because now I'm pre-inoculating my cabbage with, you know, the successful kraut, and then I can do it in 2 days instead of like 5 days, right? And then plus I'm diluting the salt content because I don't want to eat too much salt in my diet. I'm diluting with 2 additional heads of purple cabbage, which are more nutritious than the green cabbage. So I've also made my own kombucha, and my favorite ferment actually is a 1-day ferment in the summertime. I basically buy pasteurized fruit juice, and it's high antioxidant fruit juice. So I mean like tart cherry, sometimes it's like an antioxidant blend of like purple, carrot, pomegranate, tart cherry, and I buy pasteurized juice. You're like, John, why are you buying pasteurized juice? Because I've been against pasteurized juice forever on my diet. It's pasteurized, it's bad. There's still nutrients in there, and the cool thing about pasteurization is they killed all the bacteria. So now when I buy the pasteurized juice, there's no bacteria in there, so I have a clean slate, and now I can put select bacteria like Cerevisiae boulardii in there, and then basically it ferments in 1 day, will get carbonated. The Cerevisiae boulardii, it's a yeast, probiotic yeast, will basically eat all the sugar up, make it carbonated, and if I go 1 day, it's still a little bit sweet and carbonated. If I go 2 days, it started tasting like, definitely there's no sugar in there anymore, but it's really carbonated. And then I drink that, and then how Cerevisiae boulardii was discovered. I have a video on how to do this because I was in Florida when I made it. But anyways, this guy named Dr. Bollard was in Asia, Southeast Asia, and they were having the cholera epidemic. And he found that while they're having the cholera epidemic, people that drink lychee skin tea, right? And how many raw vegans eat lychee skins? Not too many, they eat lychee. But lychee skin tea had this beneficial yeast on it, and then they weren't getting cholera, but everybody else was. And subsequent studies show that Cerevisiae boulardii can also regulate your microbiome, and also this thing is like anti-E. coli, right? And so, and then it's a transient probiotic that goes through you, right? So I like to do that as my nightcap. So I drink like a little bit, like maybe 8 ounces, 10 ounces, like before I go to bed at night, because it's like something bubbly, it's not sweet, and then also tart cherry said to have melatonin in there to help you sleep better.
Okay, guys, I'm so sorry, but we're over time. John's gonna be around, so please.
Yeah, if you have any questions, I'll be outside. We'll have to take your questions.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, John.